2 talks to go today. This is our last in-person session, but you'll definitely want to stick around for Ian Mackay's talk. He is always a great speaker. But I'm also looking forward to this talk, Supercharging Alerts using Dassana. Really interesting concepts and important work. So before we kick that off, I would like to thank our sponsor, especially Cloudl. Cloudl effortlessly secures all your cloud accounts by automating visibility, detection of misconfigurations, and by providing security response. Automate your cloud security with Cloudl, keep attackers out, and focus on the quick growth of your business. Please welcome Gaurav.
Cool. So my name is Gaurav Kumar, and you can simply call me GK. I will be talking about a very common, well-known, well-understood problem of alert fatigue. Okay. If you have spent any amount of time in security, you know that you deploy any scanning solution, and you are going to get tons of alerts, from web application firewall to vulnerability scanners, IDS, CSPM tools, CWPP. It's just super easy these days to get alerts. But the hard part is, where do you start? Like, there are just too many alerts, and every single alert is yelling that, hey, I am critical, I am high. It's like the cloud is falling. So let's talk about first some approaches that I have seen. This is based upon my experience working with large number of customers. The current approach starts with prioritization based on vendor assigned severity. And that's how I think most people start. Oh, vendor says that this is critical, so let's just look at this alert first, and then let's look at high and then medium. What happens? You start with that, and then you will realize that you run into this problem that, oh, there are still too many alerts. Or the vendor thinks that alert should be critical, but you think it should be of medium severity or low. Because no vendor in the world has business context, right? It is only something that you know, right? A vendor cannot tell that encryption shouldn't matter to you, right? It's up to you. So I just think that the default severities are so assigned by the vendors are more like suggestion than anything else. So what you do? Well, why don't we just change the default severity? And how will you go about changing the default severity? Well, you will change it based upon context. Now, what is context? Everybody keeps talking about context all the time in security. So we came up with an opinionated approach of like how to think of context. But let's just start with the most simple contextual information that you would like to describe, which is, let's just take an example. Suppose you want to say that for dev environment, crypto and visibility alerts have low severity. Or you want to say that resources with tag PCI must have high severity for firewall related issues, right? Just simple environmental related context, right? Should be fairly simple, right? After all you have to do is figure out that, oh, these are my dev accounts, or maybe I have some tags, and based upon these tags, I should be able to describe my intent. Is it though? So let's talk about it. So I have seen 2 approaches there again. In the first approach, suppose you have multiple vendors. Vendor X is some CSPM, CWPP vendor. Vendor Y is some threat detection tool. And vendor Z is some vulnerability scanner. So you could go to individual vendor, log into in the tool, and do all this work. But that's not scalable, right? Now you are creating a lot of tribal knowledge, and you just don't know why this thing is working the way it's working. You ask somebody that, oh, I don't know, that's how it was, right? So what's the right way? What's the right way that you should be able to describe that given a tag, this is what my severity should be, the environmental context or the very general context? Well, you can send all the alerts to some SIM kind of a tool where you are already doing some aggregation and normalization. But guess what? As of today, this is year 2021, there is no consensus on how the tags should be normalized. This is was pretty enlightening to me, that how is it possible, but it is true. Some vendors, when they generate alerts, they will say alert JSON, and then it will have a key tags. For other vendors, some vendors call it tag set. And some vendors don't even give you tags associated with the resource which is violating some policy for which the alert is. So this is just bizarre. Like, so how will you solve this problem if you really want to express such simple thing? Well, you could write a really complicated sort of your SIM query. Suppose you are using Splunk or any other SIM tool. It will be a long query that, case, if, blah, blah, blah. Or you could write some sort of a lookup add-on which does all this work. But it's complicated, okay? It shouldn't be, right? This is such a simple thing, expressing environmental context, the general context. Now, let's talk about the resource context and policy context. What do we mean by that? So even if you are able to express the general context, the next thing that you should be able to do is, you know what, these alerts are interesting only if my resource is in this particular state. And that state is very much associated with the resource. So example would be, for a given EC2 instance, tell me its internet exposure. Like, I want to be alerted on the EC2 instance if it is exposed to the internet, right? We all get, we have seen vulnerability scanning results. There are tons of CVEs out there, and you want to prioritize. I think the easiest thing is to simply look at your internet exposed instances and start there. And then the policy context. The policy context is, say, S3 bucket open to the internet. Sure, it's bad, but it's not that bad if it has a website associated with it, because, well, that's the whole purpose. It's open to the internet, right? Or very common alert is, hey, your security group is allowing inbound connections from the internet. Sure, but if that's the purpose of it, then it's not bad, right? It is connected to a load balancer. Otherwise, the load balancer will not work, right? So you should be able to do very simple things that, yeah, for these policies, I want to say that when these conditions are met, do this. For these resources, when these conditions are met, do this. And then we already talked about the environmental related context. So we talked about the problem. We talked about some of the current approaches. So one thing became clear, that there is a need for an open source normalization, contextualization, and prioritization framework or a tool which can help you manage your alert fatigue by simply doing these kind of prioritization, right? I looked into it, we researched a lot of solutions, and none of the solutions were doing the kind of things that I talked about, the tag example, for example. So we created this tool called Dassana, okay? So that's what Dassana does. Dassana, you can send any alert, well, the supported alerts, and Dassana will normalize it, add general context, resource context, policy context, and you will be able to prioritize alerts based upon these contexts. Alert in, alert out, that's it. Before I give you the demo of the tool, there are some important things to remember. The deployment is done using CloudFormation template. It's a single-click deployment. Well, it's never single-click, okay, few clicks, okay. Multi-account support is baked in, so you can deploy Dassana in a centralized security account where alerts from other accounts are coming in, and you can tell Dassana to assume a role. 100% serverless, so no VPCs, no NAT gateways, nothing, okay? It's declarative in nature, and I will talk about what do I mean by declarative in nature. From an alert vendor support perspective, as of right now, we are supporting, so we consider alerts in two high categories. One is your risk and other is incident. For risk kind of alerts, we are supporting AWS config alerts going to Security Hub, and Prisma Cloud support is coming next week. For vulnerability scanners, I would love feedback. I would love to know what scanners are you using, which one should we prioritize first. And then for incident alerts, we are supporting guard duty alerts being ingested by in Security Hub. CSP support, currently we are supporting only AWS. Azure is coming next quarter. Alrighty, so this is really the last part. This will help you understand the demo better. How does Dassana work? When you deploy the CloudFormation template, we automatically create two queues for you. One is an inbound queue, other is outbound queue. You put your alerts in the inbound queue, and they will make its way in the outbound queue. Any valid JSON object will get processed. Even if we can't normalize it, contextualize it, doesn't matter. If your JSON object is simply two curly braces, even that will work, okay? So think of it like your alert pipeline. Now, as soon as the alert hits you put anything in the inbound queue, it triggers Dassana engine. And Dassana engine does the work of normalization and contextualization. And this normalization and contextualization is done by something we call as content, or content pack. Think of it like if you know web application firewall, mod security has a bunch of these rules, right? So that's content. If you know Snort, IDS, it's not IDS rules. So it's like that. Now, and this is just an example of how the content really looks like. We have normalization, which is a part of our content, and then we have general context, resource context, policy context, and I'll make it, and when I give you a demo, it will become clear what these things are. So with that, let me give you a quick demo. All right. Can you see this? Yeah. Cool. So what do I have here? I have Security Hub, and you don't have to look at all these alerts and all. There are tons, but what I have done is created a filter over here. And here, let's suppose I'm the most sensitive alert or critical alert these days, I won't say these days, but it had been, is the S3 buckets open to the internet. So what I have done here is that I have a simple filter which says that the title starts with S3.2, which is some, I think, AWS foundational practice, some title. And I'm seeing I have two alerts over here, right? Look at resource, right? Can you read it? Fine. Yeah. So I have basically two buckets in my account. One bucket is forward cloud security rocks. Well, it does. And there's another bucket. So there are two buckets. One bucket has a name, dash website, other bucket doesn't. The first one does have a website associated with it, and the second one does not, right? So what you want to be able to do is say simple thing like, you know what, if I have a website associated with the bucket, I think the alert priority should be low or medium. Could be anything that you would like. Maybe you would like to say that, you know what, I create so many marketing websites and we have a standard and we basically call it MKT or maybe static or something, right? So how do we go about contextualizing our alert using Dassana? Well, what we could do is take this JSON and put it in the inbound queue. An engine will process it, and it will become available in the outbound queue. The good thing is we have built native integration with Security Hub, so you don't even have to worry about any inbound queues and outbound queues, okay? The way it works is we automatically deploy an event bridge rule, and that event bridge rule is listening on batch import finding API calls. And anytime AWS config-related finding is imported in Security Hub, we automatically send the alert to our Dassana engine, and which will process it. What that means is, the moment you deploy Dassana in your AWS account where you already have Security Hub set up, that's it, you don't even have to do anything. What that means is, this alert has already been contextualized. Let me show you. Now, I don't know if you guys know about this or not, but in Security Hub, you cannot arbitrarily put your own JSON object. You are limited to user-defined keys. And that is exactly what you are seeing over here. Look at the highlighted part. All these JSON keys have been added, user-defined fields have been added by Dassana. Now look at this one. So as I said, we consider context into 3 different categories: the general context, the resource context, and the policy context. This particular alert has no resource context. I just don't know what kind of a resource context you would like to know about S3. Would love to hear your feedback, your ideas. But from a policy perspective, look at this. The Dassana policy context risk is low. And if you look at a condition name, it basically says that bucket has associated website. Another interesting thing is you can see the policy context category is access sharing. So that was another problem that we found, that suppose you want to see all of your alerts related to encryption. How will you go about it? Well, you could go about it because, say, you have multiple standards. You have CIS standards and PCI, and they have different sections. So you can write a query in your SIM tool and saying that for this standard, look at 3.2, for that section, look at that. That's painful, so what we did was, we are mapping every single policy of every single alert generating vendor, and we are assigning it these normalized categories. Whether it's a networking alert, is it a firewall alert? We have a nice hierarchy. For risk-related alerts and for incident alerts, we are using the MITRE's attack framework, because we don't want to invent something when such nice thing already exists. So I can now, if I go over here, look at my key, which is, say, Dassana policy context risk, and I can just filter by user-defined fields, and I can say, show me things which are high. There you go. There are none which are high or critical. I can say, show me things which are low, and there is only one. This is the Security Hub-centric thing. The system works across any SIM solution. So the alert JSON is available everywhere. Cool. So how do you go about modifying your context or adding the context and changing things, right? Because it's an open source tool, you see how in the alert JSON, I was showing you that the condition name, which was giving the alert a low severity, right? It was bucket has associated website. That's actually coming from our YAML file. And we can maybe read it here. This is the name of the condition. So what you could do is simply do a git clone on our repo. You can change the condition over here, and you can rebuild the entire thing and deploy it in your account. And you are not going to do that because that's just painful. So to make life easier For everyone, we have also open sourced a Dassana editor. Dassana workflow editor is something that you can use in an interactive fashion. So you can simply copy paste your alert in this alert JSON box and click run. And what it will do is run the alert across all the contextualization and it will show up. Now, be mindful of the Lambda cold start problem. The first time the alert will take a little bit longer. So it's gonna take maybe 30 seconds for the first time, and the follow-up event will probably take a second or two. So while that is happening, it already ran. So you can see that this alert, for this alert, I have a policy context, and I have a risk low when website info.website bucket URL.length is greater than 0. But what is that thing? Where is that coming from, right? If you don't know JQ, so JQ is a very powerful JSON processing technology or tool. So all of our conditions are used using JQ, okay? So all you have to do is just learn how to use JQ, write your expressions over here, and you will be able to process your alerts. With that, any questions?
Thanks, Gaurav. A couple questions. So first of all, how do you plan to keep up with the ever-expanding context of all of the different resource types and cloud primitives that you might see?
By staying awake late night and working hard.
Okay.
There's no other solution. We have to. Somebody has to. So.
10,000 AWS APIs last week.
So we are not going API by API. We are going alert by alert.
Makes sense.
There are only across all three clouds, maybe 500 to 600 policies. So it's not that bad.
And so how would you layer, one of the things that the Adobe team talked a lot about was how they manage exceptions and governance around those. How would you anticipate layering that here? Would you write rules within YAML rules on a resource by resource basis?
So pretty much you can leave a comment over here, like why are you doing this, right? So why am I doing this? Something like that. And this, whatever you say, configure over here, it gets stored in a S3 bucket, and you have a record of it, like who did it.
I also would note that Chester's talk earlier today proposed I think a pretty robust set of annotations and scoring model for guard duty alerts. Do you see sort of these two things merging, perhaps towards some sort of general framework? How do you see those things coming
absolutely.
together?
Yeah. Okay. So in fact, we had a call with Chester a few months back, and we really loved what he's doing, and this tool has taken some of the inspirations from that conversation.
That's great. Cool. Anything else in the room? All right. Well,
All right.
thank you very much.
Thank you.